Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's virtual session, Marketing Yourself. These online events are informational and workshop sessions for Mississippians, filmmakers, and a crew covering a wide array of topics. I'm Tabi Moyo, Production and Workforce Manager here at the Mississippi Film Office. In my role, I work closely with productions before they begin filming to assist them with sourcing crew, services, and location. Sometimes we receive unique requests that go beyond the average find a specific location. Sometimes we're sourcing acupuncturists or dog masseuse, but we are ultimately the one-stop shop for producers as they begin their production journey here in the state. Today's conversation is centered on learning best practices on how to best position yourself to be hired on a crew, hired on a production as a crew member, or if you have a production company or a company that offers a product or service to productions. So I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about the Mississippi Crew and Service Directory, which some of you may know about, but for those who don't, the Crew and Service Directory is one of our main tools for finding and sharing active crew in our state. The directory can be found on our website at filmmississippi.org under the Production Resources tab. We also rely on recent crew lists and keep an active crew database in a spreadsheet form from recent productions from the last 3 to 5 years. We thought today's conversation was really important to have because while we manage and maintain the database, we don't populate it. You all do. So it is critical for our working crew to develop good habits for keeping your profiles updated. Um, and over the years, we've attempted to find ways to keep our crew actively engaged with our directory because we've often received feedback from hiring producers that our database isn't the most reliable. And when I say unreliable, I mean that producers are experiencing issues like bounced emails, outdated phone numbers, or profiles showing your most recent professional credit from 2015. So even though we know that you are out here and you're actively working, it can be problematic. And sometimes the only thing that producers see is that outdated information. So they may pass you up because they don't think you're actively working or they don't see that you've updated in the last couple of years. So your Mississippi Crew and Service Directory profile is your first point or the first point of contact with hiring producers. So you always want to ensure to it shows you in your best light and accurately reflects your experience. For students on today's call, you should note that when a production lands in the state, we also send producers a list of film programs so that they gain access to graduates, recent graduates, and current students. But while we can't make producers hire you, we can help them learn about you. And here's the catch and why it's so important that you create a profile and keep it current. Production moves fast and every minute counts. Time is money, literally money. And an updated and accurate database could help save a producer valuable time. So this conversation is a reminder for some of you to go to take a look at your profiles and update them with your most recent credits. And for our new folks, if you're still working to get your first professional credit because you're still in school or a recent graduate, you can still list yourself in the department you'd like to get hired in as an intern or apprentice. That way, producers are aware of your experience level and can hire you for the appropriate position. So I manage the database, and if you have any questions, I know that was a lot of information, but if you have questions or are having trouble accessing your profile, please feel free to email me at tmoyo, and Carrie can put this in the chat, at mississippi.org. So I know that was a lot up front, but I needed to kind of give you the landscape of what today's conversation is about. But without further ado, we'll get this party started. Joining us today, we have producer Robbie Fisher of Fisher Productions, active crew member Sarah Lancaster, and casting director Matthew Morgan of Morgan Casting. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks.
Happy to be here.
So happy to have you. Thank you, thank you. So I love, to start this conversation just by having each of you talk a little bit about who you are and how long you've worked in the industry here in Mississippi. Anybody can start.
I don't mind starting. Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah Lancaster. I born and raised from Jackson, Mississippi. I actually went to film school at Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee. Graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in motion pictures. And when the pandemic hit, I moved back to Mississippi because, as we know, the film industry shut down for a good little minute. My emphasis in college was in production design, so I have worked on a couple of shoots in the props department, art department, kind of filtering through that world. But I also do a lot of coordinating work as well, field producing, coordinating, production assisting. Um, I've done some second assistant director work as well on feature films. I try to be flexible as a crew member, and I'm always trying to build my skill set and shift to departments that need me. So, yeah, I've been working in Mississippi for about 4 years, working in the industry a little longer than that with my college and schooling. But yeah, happy to be in Jackson, happy to be within this community.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here, Sarah. Matthew, do you want to go ahead?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me today. This year in December marks 20-year anniversary of my company, Morgan Casting. And yeah, I'm excited to still be doing what I love. And I love it more than ever. I think the more I grow and the more I learn, the more you just, really embrace what you do. And I work in many different places. I started really investing myself and working in Mississippi, which is my home state, in probably 2013. Before that, I worked in Toronto. I spent maybe 10-ish years up here and then decided I'm ready to come home and do what I love. And I've been sort of going back and forth between Toronto and New Orleans and Canton, Mississippi, my hometown, for the last 10 years now, and I absolutely love it. Mississippi is my favorite place of all the places I work to do what I love. And I work as a casting director. I run Morgan Casting. So I find your actors, be it the leads or the day players or sometimes the extras. And so, yeah, I'm excited to chat today and tell you about what I like to do.
Awesome. And congratulations on hitting your 20-year mark.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Robbie?
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Robbie Fisher. I'm originally from Greenville in the Delta. That's where I grew up. Lived in Jackson for about 20 years, and it was in Jackson that I embarked upon the film production world as my third career. Had practiced law for a while. I had worked in the nonprofit sector, and in about 2009, 2010, I just began immersing myself working on film projects locally. No film school training, but I kind of used working on local productions as my own film training, production training. I worked with Matthew, I think when he began casting for As I Lay Dying. That was the first feature that I worked on, and I just volunteered and I helped out with casting and loved working with Matthew. And then I was a PA on James Franco's adaptation of As I Lay Dying, and learned a tremendous amount. Now, continued to work since about 2010 on film productions. I moved to Water Valley, about 2 hours north of Jackson, in 2018. And I've continued to work on film productions from my base up here, and have worked on some North Mississippi productions. Formed Fisher Productions in about 2013, and have been involved in a lot of different projects, everything from very low budget, no budget shorts to features, almost exclusively in Mississippi. So I'm really excited. I see some familiar faces who are with us today that I've worked with before. So just excited to be here.
Awesome. And welcome again. And, I think a couple of things that y'all said, just in this beginning part of the conversation is, that relationship, when you work with Matthew and just the networking and, when you're working on these productions. And we'll talk a little bit about how important it is to network, when you're trying to keep yourself on folks' radar, and you're trying to keep a job, working in the industry. But let me start, one of the things that I'm interested in, and as I prepare for today's conversation, and I started this conversation by mentioning like the Mississippi Crew and Services Directory is kind of our tool, and we rely on it. But I'm curious to know, and I want to pose that question kind of as a starting question to you all. Like currently, like what's your relationship with this particular the database? Like how do you engage with it, and then we'll go from there. So Sarah, I'm interested. Let's start with you. Kind of just go back down the line. What's your current relationship with the Mississippi Film Crew and Services Directory? In what ways do you rely on it or not?
So when I moved back to Jackson, like I said, after I graduated from college, I was looking for ways to get involved in productions in Mississippi, and I just started Googling. Mississippi productions, Mississippi film, and of course, one of the things that popped up was the Mississippi Film Network, and so I was able to log onto the website. I saw that there was a directory, and I built out a profile. And to this day, I still will receive a random email or a random phone call from someone, and they're like, "Hey, I got your information off of the directory." And it's kind of crazy to see that, a profile that I made 4 years ago, and I went on just the other day, a week or two ago, and updated. I had some new credits and I had some new information, and just being able to have that resource out there in the world. Because again, within film, at least as a crew member, so many times the jobs that you're getting are people that you know, other people that you've met, other shows that you've worked on, and sometimes producers who come into the state who have never worked here before are looking for a resource. And so I think having that directory available is really important, because sometimes people who are coming into the state don't know anybody. And a lot of the contacts that I've made before everybody joined the meeting, I actually was working on a shoot this morning with a girl who's also in the directory, SK Pollard, and she's been a great contact. And there's been some other people in the directory that I've worked with in the past, and they've helped connect me on other shoots. So I think the directory is a fantastic resource to have your name out there on another site and your contact information for people out of state or people in state who might not have another way to find you. I think it's a great place to have all of your information listed and together.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback back off of that, before we hear from the others, it's a free resource. Your listing is free. It's at no cost to you to list yourself. Matthew or Robbie, would love for you to hop in on that question.
I'll go. Yep. I'll echo a lot of what Sarah already said. I find the crew directory to be a really great resource. As a producer, I'm often in the position of being the primary person crewing up on a film. And I turn to it all the time. I mean, I go to the directory, I Google by department, I Google or search by department, I search by region, especially because it's always great to find very local hires. So I find those features really nice. So I often find people that I'm very interested in talking to that I haven't worked with before on the directory, and I'll call them or email them. I do want to echo one of the things that Tavi said, and that is, please make sure your credits are updated and that you have like a good email and cell phone on there somehow. Some people do, and some people don't have those contacts, and it's so much easier just to automatically connect with someone to reach out on an initial inquiry and find out more about what they've been working on. Updated credits are so important too, because if like Tavi said, if it looks like you last worked in 2015, I kind of assume either maybe you've moved away or doing something else these days. So invaluable resource. I not only refer to it all the time, but if out of state or producers from other places call me, especially, I'll make sure I tell them to search the directory too. So it's a primary information tool for me as a producer in Mississippi.
I love the directory. It is just a fantastic resource to gain clients and contacts. As a casting director, it's my job as the owner of my business to promote my business. And I do that a couple times a year. You want to remind people that you're still around without being too irksome. I always say, maybe 3 times a year is a great time to connect with people. Not so much that you become annoying, but just enough that you remind them you're around. And that resource is a great resource. I keep a running spreadsheet, an Excel sheet that I save to the clouds of every producer I've ever worked with, every PA I've ever worked with, because oftentimes they can become young directors producers in the making. I keep a list of all of the directors, the advertising agencies. You know, most of the film work that I do, the larger film work in Mississippi, the clients are coming in from out of state, from New York, from Los Angeles, where have you. But all the bread and butter work that I do that keeps me alive and afloat and busy and happy, the advertising tends to come from Mississippians, which is great. And I wouldn't have necessarily gotten those clients and contacts without having found them, many of them in the directory, which is great. So I try to, like, once in a while, maybe a couple times a year, hit it up and see who's new, who am I missing. It's a great resource to sort of build your client database when you get ready to promote yourself. Absolutely. I love it.
Awesome. And I think you mentioned this, Robbie, how you engage with this particular tool, but in general, about the crewing up process. Like, as you are looking for crew, what's standing out, about whether it's you're looking at their resume or you're looking at their profile in the database? Like, what stands out as you are, and what are you noticing, before you hire somebody that attracts you to their particular profile or listing or resume?
Well, I think just obviously looking at credits and looking at their what they've worked on recently. If it's in Mississippi, I'm also looking for like connections that person has with other crew members or other productions that I'm familiar with, because Mississippi's like a big state with a small film industry family, really. So it's not very hard to go out and find people that know people that you've worked with, even if you haven't worked with them. So I'm just looking for good experience, recent experience. I'm looking at resumes to see if people have moved up in department wise, like had sort of promotions, because I think as we all know, the more you work in the film industry and will work really hard, you will get hired again if you are a good team player and you're working hard and giving your all to a production. So I like to watch people's progression too, and how they've advanced. And that's one thing that is shown on resumes or CVs or reels or whatever. So those are the kinds of things I'm looking for: where somebody's living, what they've been working on, because again, we have crews spread out all across the state. And while Mississippi State residency or Mississippi driver's license is great for the rebate program, obviously, and for the budget, it's just great to hire Mississippians, and even better, people in your local region that might be able to work as local. So those are some of the things that I'm looking at specifically.
Sarah, for you, as we hear, Robbie talk about the things that she's looking for, how have you been able to strategically kind of make sure you're mentioned, whether it's on your profile or even outside of just updating your profile? What are other things that you are doing to keep yourself on folks' radar? You can speak to, how your relationship building, what's important for you to do, when you first start working a job, when you first, if you've never worked with these people before, how are you conducting yourself, and what are the things that you do so that you get called back or get referred? Are there any specific strategies or things that you do, to make sure that you're a good crew member, or, you get that call back?
Right. Well, kind of a mix of what Robbie and Matthew were saying. I think there's kind of a joint aspect to being a crew member. Part of it is being a hard worker. I think if you show up to work and, you've got your tennis shoes on, ready for a 12-hour day, and, you show up ready to, what can I lift? What can I pick up? Where do you want me posted up? Where's my walkie? If you show up and you are ready and willing to help with tasks, I think that goes a long way, rather than, it's easy to shake hands and make friends, but I think showing that you're a hard worker and being willing to take on tasks, I think goes a long way. But on the flip side of that, I think also meeting people on the crew. So much of what we do in film is about who you know. It's about making those long-term connections. Can I save your phone number in my phone and maybe text you later? It's, because like Matthew was saying, you never know who's going to make their own short film or be connected with somebody that's looking for a PA. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've worked on a shoot, and I worked on a shoot last year, and there was a coordinator on that show, and he and I became really good friends. And I got a random call in the middle of July from somebody in New York, and they were looking for a PA for a show. And he was like, "That guy gave me your number." And the coordinator wasn't even from Mississippi, but he passed my information along because I made friends with him and because I made that connection. And so I think it's kind of a mixture of the relational side of film. Obviously, we are there, we are working, we need to be focused on the task at hand. You only have a certain number of hours of the day to get the shots you need to get. And so I do think you need to be project minded and be focused on the tasks that you're doing. But at the same time, there's a side to it of making that effort to remember people's names and reading over the call sheet and making sure, what department are you in? Like having chats and having conversations at lunch and building those relationships, because at the end of the day, you never know what that relationship is going to do and who's that going to take for you. And it also goes the same way with recommendations. I get recommended for jobs, but I'm looking to make friends that I can also recommend.
Sure.
So like earlier I mentioned, I was on a shoot today, and one of the girls that I'm on the shoot with, SK Pollard, she and I are both PAs in Jackson, and I feel if I'm not on the job, I send it to her, and if she's not on the job, she sends it to me. And it's just the people that you meet can recommend you for jobs, and they know that you're a hard worker and they can recommend that information. So I think keeping your relationship strong and also just showing up ready
Sure.
to do what the project calls for.
Did anybody else want to jump in on that? Okay. Well, one thing that came up for me, Sarah, as you were talking, is this idea of, today's conversation is like marketing yourself. And I think the thing that my takeaway listening to everyone's story is like you're always marketing yourself. You know what I mean? So it's these are the things that you have to be aware of, because all eyes are always looking at, what your attitude is, or how what your hustle is. And I think that is something, key to think about. Like it's not just let me create this profile and market myself. It's a whole, like, look at it holistically, like all of these things matter. And so Matthew, kind of going into this, you've been in the game for 20 years, one of my questions to you is, like, you've developed a really strong brand and positive reputation. How do you think you gained your position as kind of the go-to, casting director in the state? What are the key things you did along the way to get yourself to this place and this long period of time being able to have a successful company?
Well, it's a good question. When I started thinking about it, I thought, how would I apply this same sort of question to an actor? Why do the talented actors who work a lot constantly get hired? It's because A, they have the talent. They do a great job. They deliver. They're consistent, and they're likable. They're memorable at the end of the day. And I think you need sort of a mix of that when you're running your business. You need to work hard. I think I pride myself on being always reachable within reason,
Mhm.
working hours, and quick to respond. Clients love people that get back to them quickly, that confirm receipt. And I've really, in the last few years, gotten into a habit of answering people pretty quickly. And then, of course, I set limits for myself. So you don't want someone constantly, emailing you at 9 p.m. or at midnight, and they're always expecting an answer, right? You do what you need to do. But I think, you need to be really great at what you do and let your passion show. In addition to that, you need to treat others like you want to be treated. It's such a simple sort of life lesson. I think you can apply not just into your business, but into your real world life. Because people remember that if you treat them well, if you're kind, etiquette in my books goes a very long way. So I always try to thank people when I'm appreciative of an opportunity they've given me. I like to send a follow-up email at the end of each job. I often follow up with my producers when I'm working on a film or a commercial, because sometimes as casting directors, we're rarely on set. And I want to find out, how did the actors do? Give me some feedback. I think they really appreciate that as filmmakers. It shows that I genuinely care and it helps me recommend actors or not for future productions. So it's sort of a mix of, you've got to be able to deliver, you've got to be reliable, reachable, and likable. And sort of all of those things are combined into, let's use this guy. We can depend on him. He'll show up. He's easily reachable. And those are some of the things that I think that really helped me become successful in the state. And then, as casting directors, we're only as strong as our resources. When I first started casting in Mississippi, when I was doing As I Lay Dying, I think 2012, there was no big extras agency to book background. I was out there in the August sun with 30 or 40 people helping me, doing huge open calls. We were, logging everyone on spreadsheets, putting emails in databases, taking digital photos of everyone. And after film, after film, after film, after film, my database started building from 2,000 people to 5,000 people to 10,000 people. It just gets larger. And that, I think, really helped me in the beginning because I had the goods. I could, deliver. I had a really great resource of Mississippians at my fingertips. And so, and I promoted the heck out of that to try and differentiate myself and to get jobs. And, but eventually over time, I think reputation is everything. The majority of the work I've gotten has been from producers who passed along my name to another producer friend of theirs. And that's really been golden for me. It's happened so many times. So yeah, hopefully those tips will help a little bit.
Yeah, for companies, and who are trying to establish themselves, or thinking about, crew members that may be thinking about starting companies, to be a part of the infrastructure of our industry, or just, provide a service and go in a different way. I think those are all great tips for sure, especially the bits about the responsiveness, in our role. That's one of the things that we try to do when we get a production, that comes to our office or interested in filming, is being, as responsive as possible, so that we can, bring that production here and have jobs and get you, help to get you guys hired and working. So, one of the things that a question that I kind of had that came up as I was preparing for this is this idea of our industry moves fast and things change. It can change dramatically. So from a COVID to a strike, right? What are you doing in those times when the periods slow down that, that keep you, when it speeds back up and things pick back up, that you're, positioned again? And this is for anybody. This is kind of for all the panelists who wants to jump in. Like, what did you do? What are you doing? What are you actively doing to either improve your skills, or just stay relevant, in uncertain times? Robbie, if you want to start, I see you shaking your head.
Sure. Yeah. So I've produced a film that COVID delayed, and then we resumed even during some COVID conditions when SAG allowed us to use precautions and still film. And then coming out of that, had another production ready to go, and then the SAG strike hit 10 days before we were about to go. And that, unfortunately, that project never went through. But so disappointing. Reverse course quickly, adapt as best you can to what's actually going on in the production, but then using the downtimes in between productions to continue networking, to be working with colleagues on fleshing out budgets, anything pre-pro that is going on. Great way to use downtime is to work on scripts that you've put aside, or helping out others. A lot of times we'll work with people on fleshing out detailed budgets for films and getting things ready to go. Another thing that I wanted to add that I thought of is this networking idea. Like, I go to a number of film festivals. I know you guys from the film office, I always see you there. I see a lot of others of you at film festivals, but what a great way to network and meet people. Go to the panels, just hang out in the lobby and meet people. If you see producers or other I see people networking all the time and trading cards, and I've taken cards or contacts from people that I've met, crew that I've met at film festivals, just as attendees, or maybe they have a film in it, and have followed up and developed a professional relationship following that. So those kinds of things, film office events like the film summit. Wow. I mean, how can you beat that with a bunch of people in a big room to network with, to hear from, blown away by people on panels that provide information, do follow up with that. So a lot of my time between productions is spent networking, calling up people for meeting for coffee or for lunch if they're in the area, to talk more and to just develop those film industry contacts even more.
Sure. Matthew, yeah, absolutely. That's how your hand go up for sure.
I find, I don't know how it is for y'all, but for me, everything seems to hit at once and you can barely breathe, barely eat. You're trying to find time to clean your house, do your laundry, and then all of a sudden it's dead. So, it's like Great Escape was going on in Natchez, plus Paradise Highway in the Delta, plus a film in Louisiana. And I was like, I need a break just to eat. And then COVID hits, or a lull hits, or a strike hits. And, my best recommendation is stay positive. Do something productive and positive every day within your business, within your person, to keep yourself motivated. I took that downtime to like, all right, I'm going to go into my computer and clean up my emails, work on my client list. Let's tweak and update my website. Let's go on and add some credits to the film reel. Actors, this is your time to get your new headshot. You've got 3 months of downtime, maybe start a new physical routine, get ready for, whatever you need to do to get yourself in that state, because when the work comes back, it tends to come back in waves, right? So take advantage of the downtime, because I always catch myself saying, God, I wish I had a moment to do this. I'm so busy, I can't do this. Well, here's your moment. Seize the day. But I always, because the periods of no work can get to you mentally, right? The stress of survival, of just doing what you love, right? So make sure I highly recommend that you try to do something positive every day, so you can say, I accomplished this today. And it makes you feel, like you're still in it when the times can be tough. And it's a roller coaster of a ride for us all, right? There's no guaranteed work for many of us. Unless you're on some big contract, right? So you really have to sort of plan properly, plan ahead for the slow times, which can be hard to do. And make sure that you keep busy and positive in the slow times.
Yeah, Sarah, I would absolutely love to hear your perspective.
So from a crew member perspective, I would say during lulls and pauses, it can be a little bit tough, but from what my experience has been with the strikes and with COVID, I think that this is a fantastic opportunity to widen your skill set. So jobs that you normally were getting that have now gone on pause, like before the strike, I was getting a lot of narrative work. And so whether that be feature films or television, I was doing a lot of second assistant directing work. And then when the strikes hit, I started going into more reality television and working in that facet, or commercial work that didn't necessarily require actors. A documentary came to town and I was working on that. I also do some marketing work on the side where I get to kind of work in more creative fields and do video work for them and do graphic design. And so I think a lot of times during strikes, we get so fixated on the job that we're capable of doing, and that job goes on pause or goes away for a bit, and we're like, what do I do now? I think it's a great opportunity to widen and shift. I've been doing this position, but maybe I want to try this other position. Kind of like what Matthew was saying of like updating your headshots, or like Robbie was saying, put together a pitch deck, work on your script. Like, I've been doing this role, but I think this is a fantastic opportunity to practice my photography, or see if maybe marketing or commercials or other types of shoots, like where can I plug in that maybe this would be a fantastic season to grow those gifts and grow those skill set that I normally don't have. Because when everything's going and you're in those jobs that you normally are, it's hard to be like, hold on, I know I'm able to do that job, but I'd actually like to try camera department for a bit. It's kind of hard to switch gears. And so I think when things are paused, it kind of honestly gives you an opportunity to branch out and try new things. So.
I think Yeah, I think that's great advice, and very steeped in, reality because you're actively out there doing it. So I appreciate you sharing that kind of how you keep yourself sharp and ready to adapt to whatever the type of project comes into town. So that's really a cool way to look at it. We talked a little bit, about this networking piece, and Robbie spoke to that in her answer. But I'm curious to know from Sarah and Matthew, like where are some places that you find yourself networking? Like, who are you networking with? How often do you do it? And then, how does, also just throwing kind of wild card in there, social media play into this?
I can jump in. Social media is really huge for my business. As a casting company, um, going on to Instagram, to Facebook, creating profiles for my company, I think is so important. And on that note, I would make sure that you have an Instagram and Facebook account for you as your business, separate from you as your person. Um, Not everybody needs to see what's going on in your personal world. And if you do use your personal account to promote your business, make sure you clean it up, because sometimes producers and clients will go on there and check it out, and they don't need to see you rolling on the ground with a Corona in your hand, right? Because there can be preconceived notions, right? So you want to present yourself in a good light. And I'm speaking from experience over the years. But social media is really great. I think it's important to brand yourself, to have a great audience, to keep them engaged, and to also make it interactive. You know, I use my Facebook page to post and spread about the castings that I'm doing. It's a great way to promote if something great has come down the pipes for me. Excited this film will be premiering at Cannes. Excited to head back to Mississippi to work on, this film. It sort of creates some excitement, and I think it's a really good way to stay in touch with and build your audience. You can create a YouTube channel, actors, where you're uploading YouTube, your reel. You can create a Vimeo page where you're uploading your best clips, your reel. Facebook is great. Instagram. Yeah. I mean, that's a great place where I network. And I also think it's important to go into other Facebook groups.
Yeah.
That's a great way to sort of meet people and to promote yourself and to connect and see what's going on. The Filming in Mississippi page, the background extras page that we have for the state, whether they're official or unofficial, there's a lot of great participants in there, and it's such a wonderful resource to ask for help when you need it. To spread the word on a project you're working on, if you're hiring someone or looking for talent.
Yeah.
So that was sort of about how you use social media to network, right?
Yeah, and just in general, where you're doing it, how often you're doing it. So it sounds like for you, it's a constant, kind of consistent thing. And yes, it happens online, but offline, there's things that you're doing, and you've mentioned a lot of those things, and just wanted to hear any other thoughts about networking online, offline.
Well, in my experience, I would say it's a great opportunity to stay in contact with people you've worked on previous shows. So, like I mentioned earlier, on making those friendships and making those connections, you don't want to be somebody who's emailing every week and saying like, "Hey, I'm still here," because then a lot of times producers and people that are crewing up don't necessarily love that. But I think every once in a while, every month or two, if your work is kind of slowing down, a lot of times people, not in a bad way, but just they kind of forget that, oh yeah, I did work with her. That was 2 years ago, and the memory is fresh in your mind. I worked with them. We had lunch every day. We had a great time. But for them, they've got other projects going on, and they may have just slipped their mind and forgotten. And so I think reconnecting, sending that email or sending a text message to someone you've worked with in the past and saying, how are you doing? What's going on? And not purely for jobs. I think it's important to hit people up to ask them how they are and what opportunities they've been working on. If you only contact someone to see if they have a job, they kind of don't want to respond to you. I think cultivating a relationship with a lot of your networking contacts is really important. But I think, I mean, I vividly remember about 3 years ago, I was working on a job, or I got booked to work on a job as a production assistant. 3, 4 weeks down the line, they were looking for PAs. And I emailed the girl and she was like, yes, we'd love to have you. And it was a week or two before the shoot and I hadn't heard anything. And I reached back out to her and I said, hey, like, I'm still here. Are we still down? Or am I still booked to work on this shoot? And she was like, thank you so much for reaching back out to me. I've been swamped in pre-production and I fully forgot that I had committed you onto this production and we need another production assistant. She's like, thank you for reaching back out because I would not have reached back out to you. And so sometimes just sending that reminder email or hitting that person up for lunch or seeing what shoots are you working on? What kind of jobs are you working on? I think is important. Kind of what Matthew mentioned as well. I think social media is a big part of getting yourself noticed. Obviously, having your information on the Mississippi Film Office website is important for out-of-state people, but there's quite a few Facebook groups, Instagram pages that you can be following and commenting on. I've gotten a lot of jobs from Facebook groups. And I think also, again, it depends on your flexibility and your ability to travel, but don't be afraid to widen your scope. I know there's a lot of Mississippi pages out there, but there are some Alabama pages in Louisiana. There's ones that are close by and they might be willing to transport you or give you mileage, put you up if they're really desperate and looking for a production person. So I think keeping your options open and being willing to look at multiple different facets is really important rather than just pigeonholing yourself to one thing. So I think diversifying your Facebook pages you have going, making sure you're hitting up your networking contacts. I think both of those things together and just keeping an ear to the ground, you know. I've gone to lunch with somebody and been hearing somebody else talk about, oh yeah, there's this film that's shooting in Mississippi. And, you know, you do a little research and you figure out what company is producing the film and maybe just sending a welcome email. Hi, for all you know, they've lost 4 PAs that day and they are in dire need of someone. And so I think going out on a limb, being willing to contact people in a respectful way, I think is also important. No one wants to receive an email at midnight. Like being respectful, being honoring of the production that you're contacting or the crew member that you're reaching out to, I think is also an important thing. So
yeah, Matthew, for sure.
I would love to add on the note of promoting yourself, just a couple of tips because I get actors a lot promoting themselves to me. And here are my recommendations. You know, sometimes actors will send an email to me once a month, letting me know what's going on in their world. And it's just too much, in my professional opinion. I feel that you should reach out to a client, and I practice what I preach. Can you imagine if I emailed one of my line producers every month? She may not, or he or she may not write me back, right? I think you can contact all of your clients when something really great has happened. Hey, I just landed a role in NCIS New Orleans. Check me out next Friday on the next episode. Boom. Hey, I've got brand new representation. Here's my new contact information. When you have a changing of the guard, I call it, a new email, a new cell phone, a new headshot, a new reel. So there's time number 2, you can email someone. So time number 3 is if you're offering your services. Hey, I've auditioned for you a couple of times. If you ever need a reader, Matthew, let me know. I'd love to be a virtual reader or a reader online. You know, who's going to get upset with you for nicely offering up your help and services? So those are sort of like 3 times a year you can reach out, and maybe a 4th time, just a generic hello. Hey, just had you on my mind, wondering how are things, what's going on in your world, would love to work together again. So, you know, I think 3 or 4 times a year is just sort of perfect for me as a casting director. And I do the same thing with my clients because you don't want to come across as desperate. You don't want to come across as irksome. There's this fine line, you know, with how often should you promote yourself. And so that's sort of my recommendation is, you know, maybe 3 or 4 times a year. Everyone sends an email around the Christmas holidays, around New Year's. I get inundated with them. So why not pick a random Tuesday in March? Like choose some odd time to say hello versus the big holidays. When all of the happy holidays messages are coming in, it can be easy that your email gets lost in the shuffle, or I may not have time to reply. So anyway, I don't want to ramble, but those are just
I think those are all great points. And, you know, I think you were speaking to actors in your case, but I think that applies to everyone. If you're a crew member, you've worked on a production and you develop that relationship with the producer, do that, and that's how you kind of stay on their radar. But I love just being respectful about it, because it can become an annoying thing. But I think there's also this dance that comes with networking and finding the fine line to be able to do it efficiently. And I think that that's what all of you are speaking to. And Robbie, I'm interested to kind of hear that same kind of sentiment of when somebody's gotten it right in your book. So like, think about somebody who does what Matthew does. Why does that matter? And how are they doing it differently? Are they doing the same thing? And does that keep them kind of at the top of your list?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that I'll give some specific examples of people who have joined us, who are participating in this virtual meetup. There are several people on that I have worked with closely and hope to work with much more again. Karis is on, I believe, Matthew Bush, Ann Ford, and there may be others, but all of those folks, somehow we connected initially, and they made an impression on me, and it was such a positive experience that we remain connected, and may have worked on one project, but have kept in touch because of that experience and continue to work together. Or even if we're not working together, we're looking for ways to work together or helping each other out. So, I mean, I would just say, not only for initial contacts and what stands out at me, but maintaining that after, you have a great shoot with someone, you're in the trenches together, you become a family for that production. Stay in touch after that, even if it's just socially, even if it's just as friends, as professional colleagues, because we all need that, whether we're going to be working together directly or just helping each other out and referring either recommendations to other producers or for crew positions, or somebody's working on their own project and they may call me and say, hey, can you give me some advice here? And I think that's so great in a state like Mississippi, how we do that and how we remain close in the film industry here. Those are my, yeah.
I love it. And so time flies when you're having fun. And so we're getting closer to our time to wrap out. But I wanted to ask, this conversation has brought up many best practices and tips on how to stay active and working in the film industry in Mississippi. But I know each of you came to the conversation with ideas on how to best position yourself as a crew member or production service company. What are some additional points? I know you've mentioned a lot, but was there anything else that you came to the conversation that we haven't talked about? Advice for folks just getting started, and building their brand, things that you're doing before production, in between, or after? And a lot of these you've mentioned, but is there anything that we haven't kind of touched on that you wanted to make sure we brought up in today's conversation?
I just want to say, and this point may have been touched upon previously, but if you're trying to get in and you don't have a lot of contacts or don't have a lot of credits and you really want to work, volunteer as a PA or volunteer in whatever position that a film crew, or I mean, I volunteered for Matthew earlier on and loved working on some casting calls. Do that and do a great job, and I guarantee you're gonna get called back. People are gonna work with you and you will get hired. You may not have to do those volunteer positions for very long, because then you're going to start working, and that's when you start progressing, building those contacts, moving up in whatever departments or multi-departments that you want to be in. Just like Sarah was saying, I mean, you do a good job, you show up, work hard, work well with others and your other crew member family, and you will continue to work.
Sorry. I think one thing I would like to highlight as well is, as many jobs as you've worked on, as many years you've been working in the industry, there's always a contact or connection that you haven't met yet. So as far out as you think, oh, I've worked with everybody in Mississippi, my name is super far out there. There's always another contact, another networking opportunity, and they don't know who you are. So I think being vigilant in updating your profile, I think being vigilant in keeping your resume up to date, because you never know, someone's going to say, do you have it to send to me right now? I think being aware of events that are going on in town that you can go to and shake someone's hand, because again, as many credits as you get or as many opportunities as you have, you reach a point where you're like, well, I've been working in this for such a long time, I don't have to network anymore. And I'm here to tell you, as it does not matter how many years you work, how much experience you gain, there is always another opportunity and another person that has no idea who you are, and they want to connect with you and they want to hire you, but you have to be there for them to connect with. You have to put yourself out there and be active on those pages. And I think another thing that really I've noticed a lot on films, because I started at the bottom, I started production assisting, I even started in film school, volunteering on stuff and making no money, kind of like what Robbie was saying. I think the beauty of the industry that we're in is that we get to do a job that most people think is really cool, and you tell them I work in film and I make movies, and they're like, wow, that's so cool. I think what we do is really wonderful, and I think it gives back to people all across the country and the world. They all watch movies. But at the same time, I think there's what I've noticed on sets is you can be the person on set that brings the positive energy and the positive attitudes. We're not doing brain surgery. We're at the end of the day, no one's going to die if we have to wrap a day because of lightning nearby or because this is an unsafe shooting practice. And so I think keeping in mind as well, like as gung-ho and excited as we are to get this project made and to get this shoot done, I think being a voice of reason and recognizing like I still need to take care of myself. I still need to drink enough water and not pick up this 200-pound box by myself. And so I think that's kind of just like a random note, but you were saying points that we were thinking about throughout this. I've worked on some shoots that are amazing, and I've made lifelong friends, and I've worked on some shoots with people who really treat it like a job, and by the end of the shoot you're like, that was not the most amazing experience. And so I think sometimes being the person on set that brings that positive energy and is uplifting to the people around you, like, yes, we're making a movie, and yes, this is important, and yes, this is expensive, but at the same time, let's have fun with it. We're making a movie. And so I think keeping that in mind as well whenever you're working on stuff, it is important, and what the task you're doing is valid, but be aware of those around you. Offer water to somebody, say hi to somebody. They might be sweated down, exhausted from their day, and they just need someone to connect with and be kind to them. And so I think keeping that in mind as well is really important.
Yeah. Nina often says, I teach film camp in Canton, and when she's explaining what making a movie or working on a project is like, she says it's somewhere between being at camp and war, And so I think that you are, and I paraphrase it probably, but finding the balance, right, and being able to kind of navigate those spaces with a good attitude, and being that kind of person with the light on set, can make you stand out, if you're able to navigate those well. So, Matthew, were you going to add anything else to that?
I did. I wanted to add maybe a final point of, we work in an industry that's so subjective, particularly with actors, and oftentimes when hiring crew, that, my rule of thumb is do it as long as you love it, as your heart is still in it. You've got to learn to keep yourself motivated during the down times and also grounded during the high times. And don't forget that you are your best promoter. People love working with confident people, so believe in yourself. If you don't believe you're the perfect person for the job, how are you going to convince me, right? So just remember to stay true to who you are, and that will take you a long way throughout the industry.
Awesome. Well, that I would love to kind of put the pin in the conversation right there. I think it's been an amazing conversation. You all have shared so many insights about how to keep yourself on folks' radars and how to keep yourself working in the industry. And I want to ask Carrie or Nina, if there are any questions.
Yeah, there are a few questions that came through the chat. One was, and I'm not sure what we were prepared to divulge yet, but one was Christopher asked if we were having another film summit this year. I guess at this point we can say not on the scale as last year's, but we are planning a in-person networking and workshop event tentatively for August. So stay tuned for that. Another question was, Peter asked, if you've worked as a crew, how can you rebrand yourself to, if you want to pursue acting? Is there any, maybe Matthew can talk a bit about how, how that would differ, how do you, how can you get yourself out there as an actor? I guess maybe our database isn't used quite as much for actors.
True.
For one point.
It's a good question. I think certain crew members should not ethically be in front of the camera. As a casting director, I can't decide, oh, I'm perfect for this role. And I've been offered many roles from big directors and had to say no because it's just wrong. But there are many crew members who are actors, actors doing other jobs and innately love to act. So there's no reason why you can't promote yourself doing that. I think the best way to sort of learn about all the jobs going on in your region, if you want to, find out about projects on the acting side, is to get an Actors Access account. So many casting directors throughout the Southeast and the US will use Actors Access to post their jobs and promote their jobs, find out who all the casting companies are in your state and region, and check out their social media, like those pages. That's a great way to suggest yourself, and remind us that, hey, you may be a crew member doing this position, but you're also an actor, have training doing this. That would be a time when you want to promote yourself. Hey, you normally know me as this role, but here's my acting resume, and send it out. Yeah, why not open up your chances, right?
Sure.
If that's what you're up for. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are a few positions that I would say you should, if you stay behind the camera and you have those big roles, that's where you should stay. Mine at the top of the list. Yeah.
Carrie, any other questions?
Someone asked, Karen asked about how it helps to join the union. I think maybe we're planning on having that discussion in another event sometime, getting some people of the union to speak. So we haven't quite got that hashed out yet, but I think that's on the agenda for the future. So stay tuned for that one. I think that's about it.
Okay, well,
Matthew asked what factors you consider when selecting crew, but I think that was kind of answered already.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to give a little time, maybe a couple minutes, Nina, if you wanted to hop on and if you had any thoughts about today's conversation and or tips for crew that are, either joining the workforce or seasoned and we're trying to nudge to keep themselves on our radar.
Real quick, let me, I already popped it into the chat once, a link to the Career and Services directory.
Okay.
I'll reshare that, and I'm going to share a link to a follow-up survey if anyone could please fill that out. We're just trying to make these events go as smoothly as possible. So,
thank you, Carrie. Nina.
Thanks, Talby and Carrie, for pulling this together, and Sarah and Matthew, Robbie, thank you so much. Well, first I want to just let everybody know, because I've been around for a long time. People know me as, part of the film office, but you might not know that I used to be a crew member too. So I started as a PA. I went to film school. I went to USM. I went to NYU. I worked as a PA, as an intern, in the very beginnings. I worked in nearly every department at some point, just because, in Mississippi, we have to be diverse with our skill sets sometimes, particularly at the beginnings of our careers. So I have a pretty good understanding of most departments. I focused in the camera department, so I was a camera assistant for a long time, and then I started producing. So I have a pretty good range of experience in terms of what you might experience as a crew member or somebody working on a set. I've been here at the film office for 25 years. So I know what happens on the other side too, like with the producers that are coming here or the producers that are trying to build something from the ground up in Mississippi as a native. So these tips that Sarah, Matthew, and Robbie shared, 100%, I'm behind everything that you said. So folks, listen to what they've said in terms of marketing yourself and keeping updated. We try from our perspective in the office to make sure that every production, every producer, every line producer, production manager that comes to us, every department head, if they come to us, we are going to encourage them to hire Mississippians first, of course. Certainly, if we have the people here, we're also going to be honest and say, well, we don't have anybody here that has that experience. You know, like, so for example, recently somebody came to us about an intimacy coordinator. To my knowledge, we don't have anybody in the state that has that experience and the training to do that job. So, you know, we're going to be honest about who is not here. We also need to know if that person does exist here. If you work and you know that this is somebody new in our world, let them know about our database. Let them know about us so that we can start promoting them. But just because a production does come to us and we say, hey, we have people, you should go out and hire them and consider them, we can't force them. Right? We can't force them. And I know I hear the frustrations from some crew members. They're like, well, production's coming here and they don't hire us. We are promoting you. What is key here is that we're all promoting one another. And that we created this particular panel because it is not just about one way of getting the word out there. They may come to our office. They may or may not trust us. I hope they do. We try to be trustworthy. We try to be honest with the information that we have. So like I said, if we don't have somebody that does that job, being able to be honest with a producer and say that hopefully builds trust so that when we say we do have people that work in this department, in the camera department, and so you should consider them, they're more likely to take us seriously. Like, we actually know what we're doing. We know who's out there. So please keep that database updated, your information on our database updated. If you can upload a resume, upload a photo, all of those things help because you never know what that producer is really looking for. They're looking for experience, but maybe they're looking for a particular type of person physically for a job because they have a particular, let's say, actor that would respond better to a woman than a man. You know, like all of these things kind of play into how they hire. We all know that this is not just about experience. It is definitely about experience, but it's also, there are other factors that kind of play into why somebody is hired. So do everything you can to market yourself in all the ways, whether it's in your social media, whether it's our database that we have, your resume, the crew list. So when you work on a movie, yes, we have the database, but we also take the crew lists that come from productions and we pull the names out, and we have a spreadsheet too, because we also know that producers sometimes can be lazy if they're not from here and don't want to go through the database. So we'll pull the names out and put them in an active spreadsheet of like, these are the people that have worked on productions recently. So we're just thinking about all the different types of personalities that somebody that's hiring, you know, how they're going to actually process information. We don't always know that. So we try to hit them with a lot of different things so that they will access the information. And the last thing I'll say is that we are in this together. Our database, if your information is not correct, if it's not there, I mean, I have a lot of crew members that don't even list themselves. So it's real hard for us to help promote you if you're not listing yourself. So please encourage the people that you work with to sign up for the database, to have a presence. We want to be your best cheerleader. We care about Mississippi. We care about the productions hiring locally, and we're going to do everything we can to make that happen. But please help us do that. So that's my soapbox. Thanks for giving me the platform.
Absolutely, Nina. Because you have all the experience. But I just want to say to Sarah, Matthew, Robbie, you all have been amazing. And thank you to everyone out there on the virtual session for joining us today for today's session, Marketing Yourself. Hopefully you have some takeaways and some things that you can practically apply in your lives and as you're out here positioning yourself to be hired as crew. So thank you again for joining us. And if you haven't, click the link in the chat to complete that survey for us so that we can get all your valuable feedback and continue to do more of this. So follow us on social. If you haven't signed up for our email newsletter, lots of good information going out there. And with that, I will just say have a great afternoon. Thanks again.
Bye, guys.
Everybody, bye.